Grief has a way of making you feel like you're the only one left in the world. For Bennett, a single father living alone on his farmland, that feeling had become his everyday reality since losing his wife. Every night, his dog Ash would howl at the cornfield, always at the same spot. One sleepless night, Bennett followed him into the rows. He found a rusted hatch buried in the earth. Inside was a hidden chamber with blueprints, old equipment and photos of his wife with a stranger. The room held secrets about a project to save their dying farm and a betrayal that destroyed everything. What had his wife been hiding from him all those years? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The sun rose over Bennett's farm the way it always did. Slow and indifferent, casting long shadows across fields that hadn't produced a decent crop in 3 years. He stood at the kitchen window, coffee mug warm in his calloused hands, watching the light creep across acres of stunted corn. The stalks stood barely waist-high, their leaves curled and brown at the edges despite his best efforts. Drought had settled over this part of the country like an unwelcome guest who'd forgotten how to leave. Behind him, the coffee maker gurgled its last breath. The sound was familiar, comforting in the way that small domestic rituals become when everything else in your life has fallen apart. Bennett had learned to appreciate these moments, the quiet before his daughter woke, the stillness before the day's weight settled on his shoulders. Ash lay in his usual spot by the back door, a German shepherd mix with greying fur around his muzzle. The dog was getting old, just like everything else on this place. Bennett had found him as a stray puppy 10 years ago, and Laurel had insisted they keep him, despite Bennett's protests about another mouth to feed. She'd been right, of course. She usually was. The thought of Laurel brought the familiar ache duller now than it had been 2 years ago, but never truly gone. Some mornings he could almost forget she wasn't there. He'd turn to tell her something, catch himself reaching for her side of the bed, hear her laugh in the sound of wind through the eaves. Other mornings, like this one, her absence was a presence all its own, heavy and undeniable. He heard movement upstairs. Iris would be down soon, already running late for school as usual. At 16, she'd inherited her mother's dark hair and sharp mind, but lately she'd also inherited something else. A distance, a wall she'd built between herself and the world. Between herself and him, if Bennett was being honest. The stairs creaked under her footsteps. She appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing jeans and an oversized sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She didn't look at him as she grabbed a granola bar from the pantry. "Morning," Bennett offered. "Morning." Her voice was flat, mechanical. "There's coffee. I'm fine." She was already heading for the door, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Iris, wait." Bennett set down his mug. "We should talk about—" "I have to catch the bus, Dad." And she was gone, the screen door slapping shut behind her. Through the window, he watched her walk down the long driveway toward the county road, where the school bus would pick her up. Ash had gotten up to follow her to the door, whining softly as he watched her go. Bennett sighed and returned to his coffee. This was their routine now. Brief exchanges, careful avoidance of anything that mattered. They circled each other like strangers sharing a house, both grieving in their separate ways, neither knowing how to bridge the gap. The farm had been in Bennett's family for 3 generations. His grandfather had broken this land, his father had expanded it, and Bennett had been supposed to carry it forward. Instead, he was watching it die. The bank had sent another letter last week, politely worded but clear in its message: get current on the mortgage or face foreclosure. He had maybe 6 months, a year if he was lucky. The irrigation system was outdated, expensive to run, and increasingly ineffective as the water table dropped. He'd applied for grants, talked to agricultural extension agents, even considered selling off parcels of land. Nothing had worked. The math was simple and brutal. He was running out of time, running out of money, running out of options. Laurel would have known what to do. She'd always been the practical one, the problem solver. Bennett was good with his hands, could fix machinery and mend fences, but Laurel had understood the bigger picture. She'd managed the books, researched new farming techniques, attended conferences about sustainable agriculture. After she died, Bennett had discovered just how much she'd been holding together. The accident had happened on a rainy night, 2 Octobers ago. Laurel had been driving home from somewhere, Bennett still wasn't entirely sure where, when her car left the road and struck a tree. The sheriff said she'd probably swerved to avoid a deer. There were no witnesses. The car was totaled, and Laurel was gone before the ambulance arrived. In the aftermath, Bennett had been too numb to ask questions. He'd accepted the official explanation, buried his wife, and tried to hold his family together. Only later, going through her things, had he realized how little he'd known about her daily life. There were gaps in her schedule he couldn't account for. Appointments marked in her calendar with no details, phone numbers he didn't recognize. He told himself it didn't matter. She was gone, and knowing where she'd been or what she'd been doing wouldn't bring her back. But the questions had lingered, small seeds of doubt that he'd tried to ignore, until last night. Last night, everything had changed. Bennett carried his empty mug to the sink and stared out at the cornfield. In the daylight it looked harmless, just another struggling crop on a struggling farm. But last night, following Ash through those dark rows, his flashlight beam cutting through the shadows, he'd felt something else. A presence. A secret waiting to be uncovered. The hidden hatch had been there all along, buried under decades of soil and corn stubble. When he'd forced it open, hinges screaming in protest, the smell of old earth and metal had rushed up to meet him. The ladder down had been solid despite its age, and the chamber below had been surprisingly dry. By the light of his phone, Bennett had seen a room about 12 feet square. Metal shelves lined 2 walls, holding plastic bins filled with papers, equipment, and, most unsettling of all, photographs. His wife's face had stared back at him from multiple images, always standing beside the same man, tall, thin, silver-haired with an intense expression. In one photo, they stood in front of a whiteboard covered in equations. In another, they were examining something in a field that looked remarkably like Bennett's own land. The blueprints had been spread across a makeshift desk, detailed schematics for what appeared to be an irrigation system. But unlike anything Bennett had seen before, Laurel's handwriting was all over the margins. Notes about flow rates and pressure systems and underground aquifers. He'd stayed down there for over an hour, trying to make sense of it all, before the cold and confusion had driven him back up. Now, in the morning light, part of him wondered if he'd imagined the whole thing. But his boots were still caked with the distinctive red clay from the chamber floor, and his jacket still smelled of that underground space. Ash padded over and pressed his head against Bennett's leg. The dog had been acting strange for months, and now Bennett understood why. Somehow Ash had known. Dogs could smell things humans couldn't, sense things beyond human perception. The chamber was there, hidden but not forgotten, and Ash had been trying to tell him all along. "What do we do, boy?" Bennett asked quietly, scratching behind the dog's ears. Ash looked up at him with those wise, brown eyes that seemed to understand more than any dog should. The sun was higher now, burning away the morning cool. Bennett had work to do. Fence repairs, equipment maintenance, 1,000 small tasks that kept a failing farm from complete collapse. But his mind was already elsewhere, already planning his return to that underground room. He needed to understand what Laurel had been doing. He needed to know why she'd kept it secret. And most of all, he needed to know if it had anything to do with the night she died. Down the road, he could see a vehicle parked on the shoulder, a dark sedan that had been there, off and on, for the past few days. Probably just someone having car trouble, he'd told himself. But now, with everything else he'd discovered, Bennett wasn't so sure. He turned away from the window and headed for the door. The chores wouldn't wait, and neither would his questions. Today, after Iris came home from school, after the evening feeding and the daily routines were complete, he would go back down into that chamber. This time, he'd bring better light and more time. This time, he'd start looking for real answers. Bennett waited until after dark. Iris had finished her homework and retreated to her room, headphones on, lost in whatever world teenagers escape to these days. He'd told her he was going to check the irrigation pump, which wasn't entirely a lie. He'd done that first, buying himself an alibi for being out in the field. Now he stood at the edge of the cornfield with a proper flashlight, a toolkit, and a canvas bag. Ash waited beside him, alert and focused. The dog knew where they were going. "All right, boy," Bennett said quietly. "Show me again." Ash moved forward into the corn rows, and Bennett followed. The night was clear and cool. Stars scattered across the sky, like seeds thrown by some cosmic hand. The only sounds were his boots crunching on dry earth and the whisper of brittle leaves brushing against his jacket. The hatch looked different in the better light, more real, more deliberately constructed. Someone had gone to considerable trouble to hide this entrance. Bennett knelt and examined it more carefully than he had the night before. The metal was old but well maintained, the hinges oiled despite their rusty appearance. This wasn't abandoned. This had been in use. He descended the ladder with more confidence this time, his flashlight clamped between his teeth until he reached the bottom. Then he set up a battery-powered lantern he'd brought, and the chamber flooded with steady light. The space was exactly as he remembered, shelves of storage bins, the desk with blueprints, equipment he couldn't immediately identify. But now, with time and light, he could examine everything properly. He started with the blueprints, spreading them out on the desk. The technical drawings were sophisticated, far beyond anything Bennett could have created himself. They showed a network of underground pipes, sensors, and what appeared to be some kind of filtration system. Notes in Laurel's handwriting covered the margins. Tested section 4B. Moisture retention up 47%. Vance suggests adjusting flow rate. Must keep this from Bennett. Too dangerous if Axiom finds out. Bennett's hand stilled on the paper. Too dangerous. The words seemed to pulse in the lantern light. He moved to the photographs, pinned to a corkboard on the wall. Most showed Laurel with the silver-haired man, but now Bennett could read the name tags. In some images, Dr. Sterling Vance, hydrologist. Conference badges, academic settings, field research sites. The photos spanned what looked like several years. A metal box sat on one of the shelves, and something about it drew Bennett's attention. It was locked, but the key hung on a small hook beside it, hidden in plain sight for someone who knew where to look. He opened it carefully. Inside was a journal. Laurel's journal. Bennett sank into the folding chair by the desk, the journal heavy in his hands. The first entry was dated 8 years ago, shortly after they'd had a particularly bad harvest. He remembered that year, the worry, the bills, the tension that had crept into their marriage like frost. Met Dr. Sterling Vance today at the regional farming conference, Laurel had written. He's doing revolutionary work in water conservation and drought resistance. When I told him about our farm situation, he got very interested. Says our land might be perfect for testing his new irrigation technology. Could this be the answer we've been praying for? Bennett turned pages, watching his wife's hope grow through her words. She and Vance had begun corresponding. He'd visited the farm when Bennett was away at cattle auctions or farm supply runs. They'd conducted soil tests, water table measurements, feasibility studies. Sterling says the technology could save not just our farm, but thousands like it across the region, she'd written 6 months after that first meeting. Small-scale farmers are dying out because of water scarcity and corporate monopolies on irrigation systems. His breakthrough could change everything, make the technology affordable, accessible, sustainable. He's applying for grants to fund the research. The entries continued, detailing months of secret work. Laurel had helped Vance build the underground chamber to protect the research. They'd installed test systems in hidden sections of the farm. The results had been promising, exceptional even. Then, about 5 years ago, the tone shifted. A company called Axiom Agritech has approached Sterling with a partnership offer. They want to fund his research, help bring it to market. He's hesitant but says we need their resources to scale up. I don't trust them. I've heard things about Axiom, how they buy up small operations and patents, then sit on the technology. But Sterling thinks we can negotiate terms that protect the farmers' interests. Bennett's jaw tightened. He'd heard of Axiom Agritech. They controlled water rights and irrigation systems across half the state, charging premium prices that small farmers could barely afford. They were the reason his own system was so expensive to maintain. He flipped forward, finding entries from 4 years ago. We signed the partnership agreement today. Sterling assured me it protects our work, but I made him promise to keep backup copies of everything separate from Axiom's servers. Something feels wrong about this, but we're so close to a breakthrough. The test results on Bennett's land are extraordinary. Crop yields up 60%, water usage down by half. If this works, we could save the farm. We could save all the farms. More pages. The handwriting grew more hurried, more worried. Axiom isn't developing the technology, they're burying it. Sterling discovered they have no intention of bringing it to market. They want to patent it and lock it away, maintain their monopoly on expensive systems. We confronted them today. They threatened legal action, said we'd signed away our rights. Sterling is devastated. All his work, all our hope, for nothing. Bennett's hands were shaking now. He forced himself to keep reading. We're going to fight back. Sterling found a loophole in the contract. Technically, the research conducted on private land without Axiom funding isn't covered. All the work we did here in the chamber, all our test results from Bennett's fields, belong to us. We're going to take it public, release the technology as open source, so no one can monopolize it. Sterling is terrified, but it's the right thing to do. The world needs this. The next several entries detailed their plans. They'd compiled documentation, prepared technical specifications, contacted agricultural journals. Laurel had reached out to a journalist named Claudia Sheffield, who specialized in exposing corporate malfeasance. Then came an entry that made Bennett's blood run cold. Someone broke into Sterling's office last night. Nothing was taken, but files were disturbed. He's sure it was Axiom sending a message. Today I found a letter in our mailbox. No stamp, no return address. It was typed, "Cease all research activities immediately or face consequences. I'm scared, but we're too close to stop now." Tomorrow I meet with Claudia Sheffield. Once the story is public, Axiom can't touch us. The truth will protect us. That entry was dated October 14th, 2 years ago, the day before Laurel died. There were no more entries after that. Bennett sat in the silent chamber, the journal open on his lap, understanding washing over him like cold water. The accident hadn't been an accident. The swerve to avoid a deer, the wet road, the timing, none of it had been chance. They'd killed her. Axiom Agritech had killed his wife to protect their monopoly. He thought about the dark sedan parked on the road near his property. He thought about Laurel's secretive behavior in those final months, the appointments she wouldn't explain, the tension he'd attributed to farm stress. She'd been protecting him by keeping him ignorant. She'd been trying to save their farm, save their future, and it had cost her everything. Ash whimpered from the bottom of the ladder, sensing Bennett's distress. The dog moved closer, pressing against his leg. Bennett closed the journal carefully and placed it back in the metal box. His mind was racing, trying to process everything he'd learned. Laurel had been a hero, and he'd never known. She'd been fighting a battle he hadn't even realized was happening. Now he had a choice. He could seal this chamber back up, try to protect himself and Iris by forgetting everything he'd discovered. Or he could finish what Laurel had started, expose Axiom, bring the technology to light, make her sacrifice mean something. But if Axiom had been willing to kill once to protect their secrets, they wouldn't hesitate to do it again. Bennett looked around the chamber, at the blueprints that could revolutionize farming, at the equipment that represented years of secret work, at the photographs of his wife's face, determined and hopeful. He thought about Iris upstairs in the farmhouse, already motherless, already grieving. Could he risk making her an orphan? But he also thought about all the other farmers struggling like he was, slowly losing their land to drought and debt. He thought about Laurel's words. The world needs this. He gathered up the most important documents, the journal, key blueprints, photographs, and placed them in his canvas bag. Tomorrow he would figure out his next step. Tonight, he just needed to get back to the house, to make sure Iris was safe. As he climbed the ladder and emerged into the night air, Bennett noticed something that made him freeze. There were fresh tire tracks in the dirt road that bordered his field. Someone had been here recently, stopped where they could watch the field. Watch him, Ash growled low in his throat, hackles raised, staring into the darkness beyond the corn. Bennett closed the hatch and covered it quickly. His heart was pounding now, instincts screaming danger. He headed back toward the house, Ash close beside him, the canvas bag heavy with secrets and proof. Everything had changed. The grief he'd carried for 2 years had transformed into something sharper, harder. His wife hadn't died in an accident. She'd been murdered, and the people responsible were still out there, still watching, still protecting their interests. Bennett didn't know yet what he was going to do. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He couldn't let Laurel's death be for nothing. Whatever happened next, the truth was going to come out. Bennett didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him, acutely aware of every creak and groan. The canvas bag sat in his closet, hidden behind old winter coats, its contents burning in his mind like hot coals. Should he tell Iris? She deserved to know the truth about her mother. But the truth came with danger, and his first duty was to keep his daughter safe. Laurel had kept him in the dark for the same reason, protection through ignorance. Maybe that had been the right call. He rose before dawn and made coffee, his movements automatic. Through the kitchen window, he watched the sky lighten, revealing the cornfield in shades of grey and amber. Somewhere out there, hidden beneath the earth, lay proof of a conspiracy that had cost his wife her life. When Iris came downstairs, Bennett studied her face, so much like Laurel's it sometimes hurt to look at her. She grabbed her usual granola bar, avoiding his eyes. "Iris," he said, then stopped, unsure how to continue. She paused, one hand on the door. "What? I love you. You know that, right?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something in her expression softened. "I know, Dad. I love you too." It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd shared in weeks. After she left for school, Bennett felt the weight of his decision settle heavier. Whatever he did next, he had to do it carefully. He had to do it right. He spent the morning doing research on his laptop, sitting at the kitchen table with his 3rd cup of coffee going cold beside him. Dr. Sterling Vance proved difficult to find. The man had a distinguished academic record, published papers on hydrology, groundwater management, sustainable agriculture. But 3 years ago, his online presence had simply stopped. No new publications, no conference appearances, no university affiliation. Bennett found a few old news articles mentioning Vance's innovative work, but nothing recent. It was as if the man had vanished, or gone into hiding. Next, he searched for information about Axiom Agritech. The company had a polished website full of corporate speak about sustainable solutions and partnering with farmers. But when Bennett dug deeper into agricultural forums and farmer discussion boards, a different picture emerged. Small farmers complained about Axiom's predatory pricing. Others mentioned technologies they'd tried to develop independently, only to be hit with patent infringement suits from Axiom. One thread discussed promising irrigation, innovations that had mysteriously disappeared after the researchers received corporate buyout offers. The pattern was clear. Axiom didn't just control the market. They actively suppressed any competition or innovation that might threaten their dominance. Bennett found himself on a forum dedicated to water rights, issues in agricultural communities. He created an anonymous account and posted a careful question. Has anyone else experienced problems with new farming technologies being buried by large corporations? Within an hour, he had a dozen responses. Farmers from across the region shared similar stories. A few mentioned specific names, researchers who'd gone silent, projects that had been shut down, legal threats that had crushed small operations. One response caught his attention. Check what happened to the hydrologist who was working on that revolutionary water system 5 years ago. Vance something. Guy just disappeared after some corporate deal went bad. Bennett's pulse quickened. Other people knew about Vance's work. Other people remembered. He was so absorbed in his research that he didn't hear the truck pull up until Ash started barking. Bennett looked out the window to see his neighbor, Virgil, climbing out of a battered pickup. Virgil was in his 70s, weathered as the land itself, with hands that had worked soil for more decades than Bennett had been alive. He owned the adjacent farm and had known Bennett's family for 3 generations. Bennett met him at the door. "Morning, Virgil." "Morning." The old man's eyes were sharp beneath bushy white eyebrows. "Got a minute to talk?" They sat on the porch, 2 men comfortable with silence. Ash settled at Bennett's feet, still alert but no longer anxious. "Saw your lights on late last night," Virgil said finally. "Out in the field," Bennett's stomach tightened. "Just checking the irrigation system." "Uh-huh." Virgil was quiet for a moment. "Bennett, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. You've been poking around in that old chamber out in your cornfield?" The question hit like a physical blow. Bennett stared at his neighbor. "You know about that?" "Known about it for years. Laurel asked me to keep quiet." Virgil pulled out a handkerchief and wiped his face. "She was working on something important. Something that scared her toward the end. Why didn't you tell me?" "She made me promise. Said it was safer for you if you didn't know." Virgil met his eyes. "After she died, I figured that was the end of it. But if you've found it now, if you've been down there, well, you need to know what you're dealing with." Bennett leaned forward. "Tell me." "About 5-6 years back, I started seeing strange cars around these parts. Dark sedans, men in suits, didn't look like any farmers or agricultural agents I'd ever seen. They'd park on the county roads, just watching. Laurel told me she was working with some scientist on a water project, said it could save farms like ours. But she was worried about a company that was interested in the technology. Said they weren't trustworthy." "Axiom Agritech," Bennett said. Virgil nodded slowly. "That's the name. Last few months before Laurel died, those cars showed up more often. Sometimes right out front of your property. She asked me once if I'd seen anyone prowling around. I told her no, but I started keeping my shotgun closer." Bennett's hands clenched into fists. "Did you see anything the night she died?" "I wondered if you'd ask that." Virgil's face was grave. "I saw her leave that evening, maybe 6 o'clock. Hour later, a dark sedan drove past her place, heading the same direction. I didn't think much of it at the time, but after the accident," he shook his head. "I've had questions, Bennett. A lot of questions. Why didn't you tell the sheriff?" "Tell him what?" "That I saw a car on a public road, that I had a bad feeling." Virgil spread his hands. "No proof, no witnesses. Just an old man's suspicions. But now you've found whatever Laurel was hiding, and those same cars are back. Saw one yesterday, parked down by the junction." Bennett felt the walls closing in. "I found her journal. Found out what she was working on. Virgil, they killed her. Axiom killed her to bury the technology." The old man's jaw tightened. "I figured as much. Question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to take everything to the authorities. But I have Iris to think about. And you're wondering if they'll come after her too?" Virgil nodded. "That's the smart worry. These people, they don't play around." They sat in silence for a while, watching the morning light spread across the fields. Finally, Virgil spoke again. "When I was your age, I thought being brave meant charging ahead, damn the consequences. But real courage, the kind that matters, is making the hard choice to protect what's yours while still doing right. Your wife was brave. She tried to change things. Now you have to decide if you're going to honor that or bury it again. If I go forward, I'm putting Iris at risk. If you don't, you're letting your wife's death mean nothing. And you're letting these bastards keep hurting other people." Virgil stood up, joints creaking. "I'm not telling you what to do, but whatever you decide, you don't have to do it alone. I'm right next door, and I've got more guns than sense." The offer, gruff and practical, touched something in Bennett's chest. "Thank you. One more thing." Virgil pulled a small object from his pocket, a USB drive. "Laurel gave this to me about a month before she died. Said if anything happened to her, I should hold on to it. Never told me what was on it, and I didn't ask. But maybe it's time you had it." Bennett took the drive, feeling its weight in his palm. "She trusted you. She trusted you too, Bennett. Enough to keep you safe, even if it meant lying." Virgil headed toward his truck, then paused. By the way, that fancy USB thing is encrypted or password protected or whatever you call it. I tried plugging it into my computer once, just out of curiosity, and it asked for a password. Couldn't get in. After Virgil left, Bennett sat on the porch holding the USB drive, another piece of the puzzle Laurel had left behind. She'd planned for contingencies, prepared for the worst. The question was, what information had she considered important enough to encrypt and hide with a trusted neighbor? He needed to get into that drive. He needed to find Dr. Sterling Vance. He needed to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with, but first he needed to make sure Iris was protected. Bennett went inside and pulled up the browser on his laptop. He searched for information about Claudia Sheffield, the journalist Laurel had contacted. What he found made his blood run cold. Claudia Sheffield had been reported missing the same day Laurel died. Her car was found abandoned near the state border. No body had ever been recovered. The case remained open but cold. Two women, both working to expose Axiom's corruption, both gone on the same day. It was too much to be coincidence. Bennett stared at the screen, at Claudia Sheffield's photograph, a woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and a determined expression. She'd been someone's daughter too, maybe someone's mother. She'd tried to tell the truth, and she'd paid the ultimate price. His phone buzzed with a text from Iris. Late study group after school. Home by 7, relief washed through him. She'd be with other people, safe in a public place. He had a few hours to think, to plan, to figure out his next move. Bennett plugged the USB drive into his laptop. A password prompt appeared immediately. He tried the obvious options: Laurel's birthday, Iris's birthday, their anniversary. Nothing worked. He sat back thinking, what would Laurel have used? What meant enough to her that she'd choose it as a password, but would also be guessable by someone who knew her well? Then it hit him. He typed in the coordinates of their farm, the exact latitude and longitude of the place they'd built their life together. The drive unlocked. Inside were dozens of files, technical documents, test results, photographs, email correspondence between Laurel and Vance, and most damning of all, recorded phone calls, with Axiom executives making explicit threats. Bennett's hands trembled as he clicked through the files. Laurel had documented everything. She'd built an airtight case against Axiom Agritech. She'd been ready to go public. She'd had all the proof she needed, and they'd killed her for it. Now that proof sat on Bennett's laptop, a loaded gun pointed at one of the most powerful agricultural corporations in the country. The question was whether he had the courage to pull the trigger. Bennett spent the afternoon combing through the files on Laurel's USB drive, each document adding another layer to his understanding of what his wife had been fighting against. The recorded phone calls were particularly damning. Axiom executives speaking with casual arrogance about containing the Vance situation and eliminating competitive threats. One recording made him stop breathing. "Ms. Sawyer, you need to understand the position you're putting yourself in." The voice was smooth, professional, terrifying in its calm delivery. Dr. Vance's research belongs to Axiom Agritech. Any attempt to publish or distribute this technology will result in immediate legal action. We have teams of attorneys who specialize in intellectual property disputes. They will bury you in litigation for years, Laurel's voice responded, steady but tense. The research conducted on my private property with my resources isn't covered by your agreement with Dr. Vance. I've had attorneys review the contract. Your attorneys are small-town lawyers playing in a game they don't understand. We're offering you a very generous settlement. Take it, sign the non-disclosure agreement, and walk away. I'm not interested in your money. Then you're interested in consequences. The man's tone hardened. We know where your daughter goes to school, Ms. Sawyer. We know your husband's farming operation is barely solvent. It would be unfortunate if additional complications arose in your life. Banks can be very unforgiving when property values suddenly decrease. There was a long pause. When Laurel spoke again, her voice shook with barely controlled fury. Are you threatening my family? I'm explaining reality. Cease all research activities immediately or face consequences you won't like. The recording ended. Bennett sat frozen, staring at his laptop screen. They'd threatened Iris. They'd threatened him. And Laurel, protecting them both, had continued her work in secret, believing she could outmaneuver them if she gathered enough proof. She'd been wrong. He found a document titled Axiom Evidence of Suppression buried in a subfolder. It detailed other technologies Axiom had acquired and buried over the past decade. Drought-resistant crop strains, affordable desalination techniques, efficient solar-powered irrigation, all innovations that could have helped struggling farmers, all locked away to protect Axiom's market dominance. Laurel had also compiled a list of names, researchers, journalists, activists who'd tried to challenge Axiom's practices. Next to each name was a note about what had happened to them. Dr. Kenneth Yu, research lab fire, all data destroyed. Sarah Morrison, patent lawsuit, Yu bankrupted. Journalist David Chen, career destroyed by fabricated scandal. And at the bottom, Claudia Sheffield, missing, presumed dead. Laurel had known the risks. She'd documented them meticulously. She'd still chosen to fight. Bennett's phone rang, jarring him from his thoughts. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Sawyer, a woman's voice, professional and brisk, speaking. My name is Dr. Petra Wilde. I worked with Dr. Sterling Vance at the university before everything happened. I received a message from an online forum suggesting you might be asking questions about agricultural technology suppression. Bennett's pulse quickened. I am. We need to meet. Not over the phone. Tomorrow morning, there's a diner called Rosie's in Millerton, about 40 miles from your location. 10 a.m. Come alone and make sure you're not followed. How do I know I can trust you? You don't. But if you've found what I think you've found, you need answers I can provide. Your wife contacted me 2 years ago, Mr. Sawyer. I was supposed to meet with her and Claudia Sheffield to go on record about Axiom's practices. Neither of them made it to that meeting. The line went dead. Bennett sat holding his phone, mind racing. This could be a trap, or it could be exactly what he needed. Someone who understood the full scope of the conspiracy. Someone who might help him find Sterling Vance. He looked out the window. The dark sedan was back, parked in the same spot down the road. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. That evening, when Iris came home from her study group, Bennett had dinner ready, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, comfort food from her childhood. She looked surprised but pleased. What's the occasion? She asked, dropping her backpack by the door. No occasion. Just thought we could eat together for once. They sat at the kitchen table, and for the first time in months, the silence between them didn't feel hostile. It felt almost comfortable. How was school? Bennett asked. Fine. Mrs. Kowalski assigned another impossible essay on the symbolism in Catcher in the Rye. Iris rolled her eyes. Like we can't just say a book is about a confused kid without making everything a metaphor. Bennett smiled. Your mother used to say the same thing about her English classes. Iris looked up, something shifting in her expression. She didn't talk about Laurel often. The pain was still too raw. Really? She thought over-analyzing literature killed the joy of reading. Used to drive her teachers crazy. Bennett paused, then decided to take a risk. You remind me of her more every day. Not just how you look, but how you think. She would have been so proud of you. Iris's eyes grew bright. She looked down at her soup. I miss her, Dad, every single day. Me too. Sometimes I get angry at her, Iris admitted quietly. For leaving us. For not being here. I know it's not fair. The accident wasn't her fault. But I still feel it. Bennett's throat tightened. His daughter was angry at a ghost, and he couldn't tell her the truth. That Laurel's death hadn't been an accident, that she'd been murdered trying to save their future. The knowledge sat between them like a wall. Your mother loved you more than anything in this world, Bennett said carefully. Everything she did for you, for us. Never doubt that. I don't, Iris wiped at her eyes. I wish I could tell her things. About school, about life. About how hard it is to figure everything out without her. Bennett reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. You can tell me. I know I'm not your mother, but I'm here. I'm always here. They sat like that for a moment, connected by grief and love and the silence that held all the words they couldn't say. Later, after Iris had gone upstairs to finish her homework, Bennett stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the darkened cornfield. The chamber was out there, holding Laurel's secrets and dreams. The sedan was still on the road, holding unknown watchers with unknown intentions. He thought about Dr. Petra Wilde's call, about the meeting tomorrow. He thought about the encrypted files on the USB drive, about Sterling Vance in hiding somewhere, about Claudia Sheffield's cold case. Most of all, he thought about Iris's words. Everything she did for you. For us, Laurel had fought alone, keeping secrets to protect her family. But those secrets had gotten her killed, and now Bennett was walking the same dangerous path. The difference was, he couldn't keep Iris in the dark forever. Eventually, she'd have to know the truth, but not yet. Not until he understood exactly what he was dealing with. Bennett pulled out his phone and set an alarm for 6 a.m. He'd need to leave early to make the 40-mile drive to Millerton, and he'd need to be careful about the sedan following him. Virgil's offer of help echoed in his mind. He didn't have to do this alone. Before bed, Bennett went down to the kitchen one more time. He found an old letter among Laurel's papers in the drawer where she'd kept household documents. It was typed, no signature, no return address. The message was simple and chilling. Cease all research activities immediately or face consequences. He'd seen this before. Laurel had mentioned receiving such a letter in her journal. But holding the physical evidence in his hands made it real in a way that reading about it hadn't. Someone had stood at their mailbox, had walked up their driveway, had delivered this threat to his home. They'd invaded his life, threatened his family, and killed his wife. Bennett folded the letter carefully and added it to the growing collection of evidence. Tomorrow he'd meet with Dr. Wilde. Tomorrow he'd start understanding how to fight back. He checked the locks on all the doors, made sure Ash was settled for the night, and climbed the stairs to his bedroom. Through Iris's door, he could hear music playing softly. She always studied with music on. Just like her mother, Bennett paused outside her room, listening to the gentle rhythm, thinking about all the ways he'd failed to protect the people he loved. Laurel had died keeping secrets meant to save them. He wouldn't make the same mistake. Whatever happened next, he'd face it with his eyes open and his daughter safe. The house settled into nighttime quiet. Outside, in the darkness beyond the cornfield, the sedan remained at its post. Inside, Bennett lay awake planning his next move, unaware that forces much larger than he'd imagined were already moving against him. The game had started the moment he descended into that hidden chamber. Now he had to play it through to the end, whatever that might be, for Laurel, for Iris, for all the other farmers struggling against an enemy they couldn't see, for the truth that had been buried along with his wife. Bennett left the house before dawn, telling himself it was just another early morning. He'd left a note for Iris, saying he had to pick up parts for the tractor, a plausible enough excuse that wouldn't raise questions. Ash had wanted to come, but Bennett couldn't risk bringing the dog into whatever he was walking into. The drive to Millerton took him through rolling farmland, past properties in various states of success and failure. Some farms showed green fields and modern equipment. Others looked like his own, struggling, patched together, held on through sheer stubborn will. He wondered how many of these farmers knew about Axiom's monopoly, about the technologies that could save them being deliberately suppressed. He checked his mirrors constantly. The sedan hadn't followed him from the house, but that didn't mean he was unwatched. These people had resources, organization. They'd killed at least 2 women to protect their interests. Bennett was under no illusions about his own safety. Millerton was a small town, the kind of place where strangers got noticed. Rosie's diner sat on the main street, a chrome and red fixture that probably hadn't changed since the 1960s. Bennett parked where he could see the entrance and waited, watching for anything unusual. At precisely 10 o'clock, a woman in her 50s entered the diner. She wore jeans and a practical jacket, her grey-streaked hair pulled back in a ponytail. She scanned the room with the wariness of someone who'd learned to be careful, then made eye contact with Bennett and nodded slightly. He followed her inside. The diner was half full, mostly older folks having late breakfast. The ambient noise of conversation and clinking dishes provided cover. The woman chose a booth in the back corner away from windows. "Dr. Wilde?" Bennett asked as he slid into the seat across from her. "Call me Petra." Her eyes were intelligent and sad. "You look like your wife. I mean, Iris does. I saw photos. But you have the same expression Laurel had in those last months. Determined, frightened, trying not to show it." A waitress came by. They both ordered coffee, making small talk until she left. Then Petra leaned forward, speaking quietly. "How much do you know?" "I found the chamber, found Laurel's journal, and the USB drive she left with my neighbor. I know about the technology, about Axiom's threats, about what happened to Claudia Sheffield." Bennett's hands tightened around the coffee mug the waitress had just delivered. "I know they killed my wife." Petra's face confirmed what he'd said. "I'm sorry. Laurel was brilliant and brave. She deserved better. Tell me about Sterling Vance. Tell me everything." Petra glanced around, then began speaking in a low, urgent voice. Sterling was one of the most gifted hydrologists of his generation. His breakthrough with water conservation could have changed agriculture across the drought zones, made it possible for small farmers to compete with industrial operations. Axiom Agritech saw the threat immediately, so they offered him a partnership, a trap disguised as an opportunity. They funded his research, gave him access to their facilities, made him think they were going to bring the technology to market. By the time he realized their real intention was to bury it, he'd signed contracts that gave them control over everything. The waitress returned with their coffee. They waited until she was out of earshot. Laurel told him there was a loophole, Bennett said. "Research conducted on private land without Axiom funding." "That's right. Sterling had been running tests on your farm for years before the Axiom deal. That research belonged to him free and clear. When he and Laurel decided to go public, they planned to release those findings as open-source technology. No patents, no corporate control. Anyone could use it, which would have made Axiom's expensive systems obsolete. Worse than that, it would have proven they'd been deliberately suppressing affordable alternatives for years. The legal exposure alone would have been catastrophic. Then there were the optics. A corporation squeezing struggling farmers while sitting on technology that could save them. Petra's expression was grim. They couldn't let that happen, so they threatened Laurel. When that didn't work, they killed her, and Claudia Sheffield. She was the journalist who was going to break the story. She had sources inside Axiom, documents proving systematic suppression of agricultural innovations. The day before she planned to publish, she vanished. Petra's voice dropped even lower. Her sources vanished too. 3 people all gone within 48 hours. Bennett felt sick. And Vance? Went underground the day Laurel died. He called me that night, terrified. Said he was going into hiding and I should do the same. I didn't listen at first. I thought he was being paranoid. Then I received a visit from Axiom's legal team. They made it very clear that speaking about Sterling's research would be career suicide, at best, and possibly worse. But you're here now, because I've been living with the guilt for 2 years. Petra's eyes were fierce. I should have been at that meeting with Laurel and Claudia. I chickened out at the last minute, told myself it wasn't my fight. 2 women died and I did nothing. I won't make that mistake again. Bennett pulled out his phone, showing her some of the files from the USB drive. Laurel documented everything. Phone recordings, emails, evidence of other suppressed technologies. It's all here. Petra's eyes widened as she scanned through the files. My God, this is enough to bring them down. If we can get it to the right people, that's what Laurel tried to do. It got her killed, then we do it differently. We don't go to one journalist, we go to everyone. We flood the internet with this information, make it impossible to suppress. Multiple news outlets, agricultural forums, scientific journals, social media. By the time Axiom realizes what's happening, it'll be too late to stop. Bennett wanted to believe it could work, but doubt gnawed at him. What about Vance? We need his technical expertise to verify the research, to show it actually works. I know where he is, Petra said quietly. Or at least I know how to contact him. He set up a secure communication method before he disappeared. I haven't used it because I thought it was safer for both of us if I didn't know his location. But if you're serious about finishing what Laurel started, I am, then we need to move carefully. Axiom has eyes everywhere. They have money, lawyers, and they've proven they're willing to kill. We need a solid plan before we make any moves. Bennett thought about Iris at home, about the sedan watching his property. My daughter doesn't know any of this. I've been trying to protect her by keeping her in the dark, the way Laurel protected me. But I'm not sure that's the right call anymore. How old is she? 16. Petra considered this. Old enough to understand the stakes. Old enough to be part of the decision about what happens next. If something goes wrong, she'll be affected whether she knows the truth or not. At least this way she can be prepared. It was what Bennett had been thinking, but hadn't wanted to admit. Iris deserved to know about her mother's courage and sacrifice. She deserved to help decide whether they continued the fight. There's something else, Petra said, pulling a small vial from her jacket pocket. Soil samples. Sterling sent them to me months ago, before he went completely dark. They're from the test sections on your farm, where the new irrigation system was working. The improvements in soil quality are remarkable. Moisture retention, nutrient levels, microbial activity. This is proof that technology actually works, not just theory. Bennett took the vial, holding it up to the light. The soil inside was dark and rich, nothing like the dry, depleted earth that covered most of his fields. This is from my land? Section 4B, according to Sterling's notes. Southeast corner near the old equipment shed. The system was running there for almost 3 years before Laurel died. The effects are measurable, documented, irrefutable. I need to check that section. See it for myself. Be careful. If Axiom suspects you found the research, they'll be watching for any signs you're investigating. Don't do anything that might tip them off. They finished their coffee and made plans to communicate through encrypted email. Petra would contact Sterling Vance through his secure channel. Let him know Bennett had found Laurel's evidence. In the meantime, Bennett would gather additional proof and make copies of everything in case something happened to the originals. As they stood to leave, Petra caught his arm. Bennett, I need you to understand what you're walking into. These people don't play by rules. They have no limits, no conscience. If you move forward with this, you're putting yourself and your daughter at risk. Are you sure you want to do this? Bennett thought about Laurel's journal entries, her voice on those recordings standing up to threats. He thought about Claudia Sheffield, missing and presumed dead. He thought about all the farmers struggling while Axiom sat on technology that could save them. Most of all, he thought about Iris, asking why her mother had to die. Eventually, she'd want a better answer than an accident. I'm sure, he said. My wife died for this. I won't let her death be meaningless. Then we do this right. We plan carefully, we build redundancies, and we make sure the truth comes out no matter what happens to us individually. Petra's handshake was firm. I'll contact Sterling. Give me 48 hours. Bennett left the diner first, scanning the parking lot before walking to his truck. No sign of the sedan, no obvious watchers. But as he drove out of Millerton, he noticed a grey SUV pull out from a side street and follow him for several miles before turning off. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was paranoia, or maybe Axiom already knew exactly what he was doing. The drive home took him past the southeast corner of his property, near the old equipment shed. He slowed down, looking at the fields. Even from the road, he could see the difference. One section noticeably greener, the corn taller and healthier than anywhere else on his farm. Section 4B, where Laurel's irrigation system had been working in secret for 3 years. The proof had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. He'd walked past it 1,000 times without knowing what he was seeing. Bennett pulled into his driveway, his mind already planning his next steps. He needed to examine that section properly, document the differences, add it to the evidence. He needed to tell Iris the truth, bring her into this before events overtook them, and he needed to prepare for whatever Axiom might do when they realized he wasn't going to back down. As he climbed out of the truck, Ash bounded over to greet him, tail wagging. The dog had been waiting, faithful and patient. Bennett scratched behind his ears, grateful for the simple, uncomplicated loyalty. "Good boy," he murmured. "Good boy. We've got work to do, Inside, the house was quiet. Iris would be at school for another few hours. Bennett had time to think, to plan, to figure out how to tell his daughter that everything she knew about her mother's death was a lie. The truth was going to hurt, but it was also going to set them free. Bennett found Iris in her room that evening, sprawled across her bed with textbooks and notes scattered around her. She had earbuds in, bobbing her head slightly to music he couldn't hear. For a moment, he hesitated in the doorway, struck by how young she looked despite her efforts to seem grown up. 16 was too young to carry the weight of what he was about to tell her, but Petra was right. Iris deserved the truth. He knocked on the doorframe. She looked up, pulling out one earbud. "Hey, Dad, did you get the tractor parts? Can we talk?" "It's important." Something in his expression made her sit up straighter. "What's wrong?" "Come downstairs. I need to show you something." In the kitchen, Bennett spread Laurel's journal, printed copies of the threatening letter, and his laptop with the USB drive files across the table. Iris stared at the collection, confused. "What is all this?" "It's about your mother," Bennett said carefully. "About what she was really doing before she died. Iris, I need you to listen to everything before you react." "Can you do that?" She nodded, her face pale. Bennett told her everything. About following Ash to the hidden chamber. About Laurel's secret research with Dr. Sterling Vance. About the revolutionary irrigation technology that could save dying farms. About Axiom Agritech's threats and suppression tactics. About the evidence that suggested Laurel's accident wasn't an accident at all. Iris sat frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the table. When Bennett finished, silence filled the kitchen like floodwater. "Let me see the journal," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Bennett handed it to her. She opened it with trembling hands, flipping through pages, stopping to read entries. Her fingers traced her mother's handwriting as tears spilled down her cheeks. "She was trying to save us," Iris said. "Save the farm." "Save all the farms?" "Yes, and they killed her for it." Not a question. A statement, flat and certain. "I believe so." Iris looked up at him, her eyes blazing with an emotion Bennett recognized, fury mixed with grief. The same combination he'd been feeling since discovering the truth. "Why didn't she tell us? Why didn't she let us help?" "To protect us. The same reason I almost didn't tell you now." Bennett reached across the table, taking his daughter's hand. "She thought if we didn't know, we'd be safe. But I realize now that ignorance isn't protection. It's just ignorance." Iris pulled her hand back and stood, pacing the kitchen. "So there are people watching us right now? The car on the road, that's them?" "Probably. And you met with someone today. That's where you really went. Dr. Petra Wilde. She worked with Vance at the university. She's going to help us contact him." Iris stopped pacing, turning to face him. "Us? This is your decision too, Iris. We can bury all this again, try to go back to normal, hope they leave us alone. Or we can finish what your mother started. But I won't make that choice without you." She was quiet for a long time, staring at the journal on the table. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "Mom died trying to do the right thing. If we stop now, if we just give up, then what was the point? What did she die for? There's real danger involved." "I know. I'm not stupid." Iris's jaw set in a way that reminded Bennett achingly of Laurel. "But we can't just let them win. We can't let Mom's death mean nothing." Pride and fear warred in Bennett's chest. His daughter had her mother's courage, her sense of justice. He wanted to protect her, wrap her in safety. But he also knew she was right. "Okay," he said. "Then we do this together. But we're smart about it. We plan carefully. We don't take unnecessary risks. And if at any point things get too dangerous, we back off." "Agreed." Agreed. They spent the next hour going through all the evidence together. Iris, who'd grown up with technology in a way Bennett hadn't, immediately grasped the significance of certain files. She pointed out email headers that could be traced, metadata in photos that confirmed dates and locations, patterns in Axiom's communications that revealed their organizational structure. Mom was building a legal case, Iris said, scrolling through documents. Look, she documented every threat, every instance of suppression, cross-referenced with dates and witnesses. This isn't just evidence of what happened to her. It's evidence of systematic criminal activity. Your mother was a lot of things, Bennett said quietly. Turns out she was also brilliant at investigation. She was brilliant at everything. Iris's voice broke. She wiped at her eyes angrily. I just wish she'd trusted us enough to let us in. We could have helped. We could have done what? We didn't have her expertise, her connections, and she was trying to shield us from exactly what we're facing now. Bennett pulled his daughter into a hug. She did what she thought was right. Now we get to honor that by finishing what she started. They found a section in the journal that made them both stop. Laurel had written, "If something happens to me, I hope Bennett and Iris can forgive me for the secrets. But I also hope they'll understand why I kept them. The truth is a burden I chose to carry alone because I loved them too much to share it. If you're reading this, my darlings, please know that every choice I made was to protect you. And if you decide to continue my work, please be smarter than I was. Be careful, be safe, be brave." Iris pressed her hand to the page. She knew something might happen, and she did it anyway. Bennett's throat was tight. That's what courage looks like. That night, they worked together to organize the evidence, creating multiple backup copies on USB drives. Iris set up an encrypted cloud account using a fake identity and uploaded everything. She also created a dead man's switch, an automated system that would release the files to multiple news outlets if she didn't log in and reset it every 48 hours. "Where did you learn to do that?" Bennett asked, impressed and slightly concerned. "YouTube and some forums." "It's not that hard if you know what you're looking for." Iris gave him a small smile. Mom wasn't the only one in this family who could learn technical stuff. Around midnight, Petra's encrypted email arrived. Bennett and Iris read it together on the laptop screen. Made contact with S. "He's willing to meet, but extremely cautious. Has coordinates for a location approximately 6 hours' drive from your position. He'll only agree if you bring all evidence and can prove Laurel's findings are intact. Suggests meeting in 3 days. Gives him time to prepare and us time to ensure we're not followed. Sending coordinates in separate message. This is dangerous. Last chance to back out. NP." The coordinates came through in a second email, along with detailed instructions about checking for surveillance and taking a circuitous route. 6 hours, Iris said. That's practically out of state. He's been in hiding for 2 years. He's not going to take chances. Bennett looked at his daughter. "We'd have to tell the school you're sick. We'd be gone overnight at least. I'm in." No hesitation. "Iris, Dad, I'm in. We're doing this together, remember?" Bennett felt the responsibility settle over him like a heavy coat. He was taking his teenage daughter on a potentially dangerous journey, to meet a man in hiding from a corporation that had already killed 2 people. Every parental instinct screamed at him to say no, to keep Iris home and safe. But Laurel's words from the journal echoed in his mind. "Be brave." "All right," he said. "We leave in 3 days. In the meantime, we act completely normal. You go to school, I work the farm. We don't do anything to suggest we're planning something. Can you do that?" Yes. They spent another hour planning logistics, discussing what to bring, how to cover their tracks. Finally, exhaustion forced them to stop. Iris stood, gathering her things to take back to her room. At the doorway, she paused. "Dad, I'm scared. But I'm also, I don't know. Proud, is that weird? To be proud that Mom was fighting for something important. Not weird at all." Bennett stood and hugged her again. "I'm proud of her, too. And I'm proud of you for being brave enough to help finish her work." After Iris went to bed, Bennett sat alone in the kitchen with Laurel's journal open in front of him. He turned to one of the last entries, written just days before her death. "I'm meeting Claudia tomorrow to go over the final details. She's found sources inside Axiom willing to go on record. Once we publish, there's no going back. I'm terrified, but I'm also more certain than I've ever been that this is right. Bennett and Iris deserve a future where the farm can thrive. Every farmer deserves that. I won't let Axiom steal it from them. Whatever happens, I know I did everything I could. And I hope that's enough. It hadn't been enough." Axiom had silenced her before she could tell the truth. But now Bennett had a second chance to make her sacrifice meaningful. He closed the journal and looked out the window at the cornfield, where somewhere beneath the earth, the hidden chamber held the fruits of Laurel's secret labor. Beyond the field, the sedan was gone from its usual spot, but Bennett knew they were still out there, still watching. Let them watch. In 3 days, he and Iris would be driving towards Sterling Vance and the answers they needed. They'd be taking the fight directly to Axiom, exposing everything Laurel had died to reveal. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, Bennett felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years, a sense of purpose, of moving towards something instead of just enduring. He turned off the kitchen light and headed upstairs. Tomorrow, they'd maintain the fiction of normal life, but underneath, they'd be preparing for war. Laurel had fought alone. Now her family would fight together, and this time, the truth was going to win. The journey to find Sterling Vance took Bennett and Iris through mountain passes and remote valleys, along roads that seemed to lead nowhere. They'd left before dawn on the 3rd day, telling Virgil they'd be gone overnight for a family matter. The old farmer had nodded knowingly and promised to watch over Ash and the property. Bennett had followed Petra's instructions carefully, taking random turns, doubling back, stopping at rest areas to check for following vehicles. By the time they reached the coordinates 6 hours later, he was reasonably certain they'd arrived alone. The location was a cabin at the end of a rutted dirt road, surrounded by pine forest and granite outcroppings. Smoke rose from the chimney. As Bennett pulled to a stop, a man emerged onto the porch holding a shotgun. Dr. Sterling Vance looked older than his photos, weathered by years of hiding. His silver hair had thinned, his face was lined with worry, but his eyes were sharp and assessing as Bennett and Iris climbed out of the truck. "You Laurel's family," he called. "Bennett Sawyer. This is our daughter, Iris." Vance lowered the shotgun slightly. "Petra said you had evidence." Said Laurel left documentation. Bennett held up the canvas bag. "Everything. Journal, recordings, technical files, all of it." The scientist studied them for a long moment, then nodded. "Come inside, but slowly, and keep your hands where I can see them." The cabin's interior was Spartan but functional. A main room with a wood stove, a kitchenette, bookshelves crammed with scientific texts and papers. Equipment covered every surface. Laptops, hard drives, printed documents stacked in careful piles. This was where Sterling Vance had been conducting his work in exile. "Show me what you've got," Vance said, setting the shotgun aside but keeping it within reach. For the next hour, Bennett and Iris presented everything they'd found. Vance examined each piece of evidence with growing emotion, reading Laurel's journal entries with tears in his eyes, listening to the recorded threats with clenched fists, reviewing the technical documentation with the careful attention of a scientist confirming his life's work had survived. "She documented everything," he finally said, his voice hoarse. "Every test, every result, every threat. Laurel was—" He stopped, collecting himself. "She was the bravest person I ever knew. When I wanted to quit, to just let Axiom win, she kept pushing forward. Said too many people were counting on us. She never told us any of it," Iris said quietly. "We had no idea what she was doing. She was protecting you. Axiom made explicit threats against your family. Laurel thought if you didn't know about the research, you'd be safe." Vance's expression was pained. "I should have insisted we go public sooner. Should have found a way to protect her better. Her death is on my conscience. It's on Axiom's conscience," Bennett said firmly. "They're the ones who killed her. They're the ones who need to answer for it." Vance nodded slowly. "You're right. And that's why I'm going to show you something I haven't shown anyone, not even Petra." He led them to a back room where a laptop sat connected to multiple external drives. "I've spent 2 years refining the irrigation system, making it foolproof, documenting every step so anyone can replicate it. The technology is ready, but there's something else you need to see first. Something about Laurel." He pulled up a file and opened it. It was a scanned document, a contract with Axiom Agritech letterhead. Laurel's signature was at the bottom, dated 9 years ago. Bennett stared at it, confused. "What is this?" "The original partnership agreement. Between Laurel and Axiom." Vance's voice was heavy. "Before I was involved." Before the irrigation project. This is how it all started. Iris leaned in, reading quickly. Mom worked for Axiom. Not exactly worked for them. They recruited her after she presented a paper at an agricultural conference about sustainable farming techniques for drought-prone regions. Axiom offered to fund her research, give her access to their labs and resources. She was supposed to develop the technology for them. Bennett felt the ground shifting beneath him. She was partnered with them? The whole time? At first, yes. They promised her credit for the work, said they'd bring it to market, help farmers everywhere. Laurel believed them. She spent 2 years developing the core technology under Axiom's banner. Vance clicked through more files, showing research logs, lab reports, all stamped with Axiom's logo and Laurel's name. Then what happened? Iris asked, her voice small. She discovered what they really intended. About 18 months into the project, Laurel overheard a board meeting. Axiom executives were discussing how they'd patent the technology and lock it away, use it as leverage to maintain their monopoly on expensive irrigation systems. They never intended to help farmers. They just wanted to control the innovation so no one else could develop it. Vance pulled up email exchanges between Laurel and Axiom's legal department. Bennett read them with growing horror. His wife arguing about the terms of their agreement, demanding they honor their commitment to bring the technology to market. Axiom's lawyers responding with legalese that basically said they owned everything she'd created and could do whatever they wanted with it. When she realized she'd been used, Laurel tried to break the contract, but she'd signed away all rights to her research. Everything she'd developed belonged to Axiom. Vance's hands were shaking slightly. That's when she contacted me. She knew about my work in hydrology, knew I'd been developing similar systems independently. She proposed we start over, conduct new research on private land, outside Axiom's control. The chamber on our farm, Bennett said. Exactly. We built that facility in secret. Everything we did there was separate from Laurel's previous work with Axiom, technically, legally separate. It was the only way to create technology they couldn't claim ownership of. Iris was reading through the documents, her face pale. So Mom lied to us. For years. She was working with Axiom, then secretly working against them, and she never said a word. She was trying to fix her mistake, Vance said gently. Laurel blamed herself for trusting Axiom in the first place. She'd been naive, she said. Believed their promises because she wanted so badly to help save farms like yours. When she realized they'd manipulated her, she was devastated. Bennett sank into a chair, trying to process this revelation. His wife, the woman he'd thought he knew completely, had been living a double life for years. First as Axiom's researcher, then as their enemy. All while he'd known nothing, noticed nothing, suspected nothing. There's more, Vance said quietly. He pulled up another file. The day Laurel died. She was supposed to meet with Claudia Sheffield and me. We were finally ready to go public with everything. But Laurel insisted on one final errand first. She went to Axiom's regional office. Why would she do that? Bennett's voice sounded hollow in his own ears. She wanted to give them one last chance. Face to face, she was going to tell them we had irrefutable evidence of their suppression tactics and offer them a choice: release the technology voluntarily and avoid prosecution, or fight us and face public exposure. Vance's expression was anguished. I told her it was too dangerous. Claudia told her it was too dangerous, but Laurel insisted. She said she needed to look them in the eye, give them the opportunity to do the right thing. They killed her instead, Iris said flatly. She left their office at 5:47 p.m. Security cameras show her getting into her car. She was supposed to meet us at 7:00. The accident happened at 6:23. Vance pulled up a map showing the route. She would have taken Highway 14, a straight, well-maintained road she'd driven hundreds of times. The sheriff's report says she swerved to avoid a deer on a curve. But Highway 14 doesn't have any curves in that section. It's completely straight. The implications hung in the air like poison. Laurel hadn't swerved to avoid anything. She'd been forced off the road. Bennett stood abruptly, pacing the small room. His wife had lied to him for years. She'd made a devil's bargain with Axiom. then spent years trying to undo it. She'd put herself in danger, put their family in danger, all while maintaining a facade of normalcy at home. Part of him felt betrayed. Another part felt awed by her courage and determination. "I need air," he said, and walked out onto the porch. Iris followed him a moment later. They stood together in silence, looking out at the pine forest. "She did what she thought was right," Iris finally said. "Even if it started as a mistake, she lied to us. For years, to protect us, and to fix something she'd broken." Iris turned to face him. "Dad, I'm angry too. I'm angry she didn't trust us enough to tell us the truth. But I understand why she didn't. She was ashamed of working with Axiom in the first place. And she was terrified they'd hurt us if we knew too much." Bennett pulled his daughter close. "Your mother was complicated. Brilliant and brave and flawed and human, just like all of us. Do you forgive her?" Iris asked softly. "I don't know yet, but I understand her better now." He looked back at the cabin, where Vance waited with the truth about Laurel's double life. "And I know we're going to finish what she started, not just to honor her memory, but because it's the right thing to do." They went back inside to find Vance compiling files onto a portable hard drive. "Everything's here," he said. "Complete technical documentation, test results, step-by-step implementation guides. Anyone with basic farming equipment can install this system. And I've included all the evidence of Axiom's criminal activity, the threats, the suppression, the pattern of violence. It's time to end this. How do we do it?" Bennett asked. "We release everything simultaneously. Technical documents to agricultural journals and farming cooperatives. Evidence of crimes to law enforcement and media outlets. Instructions for the irrigation system directly to farmers through online forums and social networks. We make it impossible for Axiom to suppress." Vance met Bennett's eyes. "But once we do this, there's no going back. They'll come after us with everything they have." "Let them try," Iris said fiercely. "We've got truth on our side, and Mom's proof of what they did." Bennett thought about the journey that had brought them here, the mysterious howling that had led him to the chamber, the journal that had revealed his wife's secret life, the evidence that proved a corporation had murdered to protect its profits. Laurel had started as Axiom's partner and ended as their greatest threat. Now her family would carry that fight to its conclusion. "When do we release it?" Bennett asked. Vance smiled grimly. "Tomorrow. I've already set up the distribution networks. Once we push the button, the information goes everywhere at once. By this time tomorrow, Axiom's empire will be crumbling." The three of them spent the rest of the evening preparing the final release package, triple-checking everything, ensuring no detail was missed. As night fell over the mountain cabin, they finalized the plan that would expose one of the most powerful agricultural corporations in the country. Laurel's legacy, born in partnership with the enemy, forged in betrayal and redemption, was about to change the world. They didn't sleep much that night. The cabin felt too small, too isolated. The weight of what they were about to do pressing down like an approaching storm. Bennett lay on the couch, listening to Iris's breathing from the adjacent room, wondering if he was making the right choice, wondering if Laurel would approve or if she'd be horrified that he'd brought their daughter into this fight. At dawn, Vance was already at his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. He'd been awake all night making final preparations, setting up the automated distribution system that would flood the internet with evidence the moment they activated it. "Coffee's on," he said without looking up. "We go live in 4 hours. I want to give you both one more chance to walk away." "We're not walking away," Iris said from the doorway. Her hair was messy from sleep, but her eyes were clear and determined. Bennett poured coffee for all three of them, his hands steady despite the anxiety churning in his gut. "What exactly happens when we activate this?" Vance pulled up a flowchart on his screen. The complete technical documentation goes to 17 agricultural journals simultaneously, along with peer review requests. The irrigation system plans and implementation guides go to over 300 farming cooperatives and online agricultural forums. Video demonstrations I recorded get uploaded to multiple platforms. Within minutes, thousands of farmers will have access to the technology and the evidence against Axiom? Bennett asked. That's the nuclear option. Recordings of their threats go to the FBI, State Attorney General, and agricultural regulatory agencies. The documentation of suppressed technologies goes to investigative journalists at major news outlets. I've already made contact with 5 different reporters who've been waiting for proof like this. Claudia Sheffield's research, which Laurel preserved, goes public with attribution to her memory. They'll fight back, Iris said. Legal teams, public relations, all of it. Of course they will. But here's what makes this different from what Laurel tried to do. Vance pulled up another screen showing a network diagram. Laurel and Claudia were going to release everything through one journalist, one story, one point of failure. Axiom eliminated that point. This time, there are hundreds of points of release. They can't threaten or silence all of us. They can't suppress information that's already in 10,000 places. Bennett studied the network, the beautiful complexity of a plan designed to be unstoppable. You've been preparing this for 2 years. Every day since Laurel died, I knew eventually someone would find her evidence, or I'd gather the courage to do it myself. The technology is too important to stay buried. Vance's face was drawn. I've lived with the guilt of surviving when she didn't. When Petra contacted me about you, I knew it was time. They spent the morning doing final checks. Vance walked them through every element of the release, ensuring Bennett and Iris understood the sequence of events that would unfold. He'd built in redundancies and fail-safes, even if Axiom somehow managed to take down some of the distribution points. Others would continue spreading the information. There's something else we need to discuss, Vance said around midday. The aftermath. Once this goes public, Axiom will be fighting for survival. They'll sue anyone they can identify as part of the release. They'll claim defamation, theft of intellectual property, conspiracy. Their legal war chest is enormous. We have proof of their crimes, Iris said, which will eventually exonerate us. But legal battles take time, and they'll use that time to make your lives difficult. Bank accounts frozen, property liens, character assassination in the media. You need to be prepared for a long, ugly fight. Bennett had considered this, lying awake in the pre-dawn darkness. What about you? Where will you go after this? I'm done hiding. Once the information is out, there's no point. I'll face whatever comes, testify in whatever legal proceedings follow. After 2 years in exile, I'm ready to live in the open again. Vance smiled wearily. Or I'll end up in jail for violating the contract I signed with Axiom. Either way, it's better than this cabin. You won't be alone, Bennett said. We'll fight this together. All 3 of us, and Petra and every farmer who benefits from this technology. They can't silence all of us. At 2 in the afternoon, Vance called Petra on an encrypted line. She was at her university office, ready to simultaneously release her own documentation of Axiom's academic suppression tactics. Are we doing this? Petra's voice crackled through the speaker. Bennett looked at Iris, who nodded firmly. He thought about Laurel's journal entries, her recorded voice standing up to threats, her years of secret work to fix a mistake and save the farm she loved. He thought about all the farmers struggling while corporations hoarded solutions. We're doing this, Bennett said. Then I'll see you on the other side, Petra replied. Whatever happens, we did the right thing. Laurel would be proud. After the call ended, Vance pulled up the master control screen. A single button would initiate the cascade. Once pressed, automated systems would begin releasing information across hundreds of platforms simultaneously. The process would take approximately 30 minutes to complete. Last chance, Vance said quietly. Once I press this, our lives change forever. Iris moved to stand beside Bennett, taking his hand. Father and daughter faced the screen together. For Mom, Iris said. For Laurel, Bennett agreed. For every farmer who's lost their land to corporate greed, Vance added. And for the future that should have been. He pressed the button. For a moment, nothing visible happened. The numbers began scrolling across the screen. File transfers initiating, uploads beginning, distribution nodes activating. The information was flowing outward like water breaking through a dam, unstoppable and overwhelming. Vance pulled up a monitoring program showing real-time activity. They watched as the technical documents appeared on journal websites, as forum posts went live, as emails reached journalists' inboxes. Within 5 minutes, the irrigation system plans had been downloaded over 1,000 times. Within 10 minutes, the first news alert appeared. Breaking: whistleblower alleges major agricultural firm suppressed drought relief technology. It's working, Iris breathed. More alerts followed. Social media posts spreading the story, farmers' groups sharing the technical plans, academic discussions erupting about the implications. The information was multiplying faster than anyone could track it, much less contain it. Then Vance's phone rang. Unknown number. He put it on speaker, Dr. Vance. A smooth, professional voice. Male, confident, with an edge of barely controlled anger. This is Gerald Hartman, Chief Legal Counsel for Axiom Agritech. We need to discuss the theft of intellectual property that you've just committed. No theft involved, Vance said calmly. The technology was developed independently of your contracts, on private land, with private funding. You have no legal claim. We'll let the courts decide that. In the meantime, you should know that criminal charges are being filed as we speak. Corporate espionage, breach of contract, conspiracy to commit fraud. You'll spend the rest of your life in litigation, Doctor. You and everyone who helped you. Bennett leaned toward the phone. This is Bennett Sawyer. My wife Laurel documented every threat you made against her, every illegal suppression tactic, every instance of violence you committed or encouraged. All of that is public now, too. You're the ones who should be worried about criminal charges, silence on the other end. When Hartman spoke again, his voice was colder. Mr. Sawyer, I'm very sorry about your wife's accident, tragic, but accusing Axiom of involvement in her death is slanderous and actionable. I strongly suggest you retain legal counsel. Already planning on it, Bennett said. Right after I talked to the FBI about the recording where your people explicitly threatened to harm my daughter unless my wife stopped her research. Those recordings are inadmissible, in court maybe. But we didn't just send them to law enforcement. We sent them to journalists, to advocacy groups, to every farmer in the region. Your company killed my wife, Mr. Hartman, and now everyone knows it. The line went dead. Vance leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Well, that's done then. The war is officially on. Let them come, Iris said, watching the continuing stream of downloads and shares on the monitor. The truth is out there now. They can't put it back. They spent the rest of the afternoon monitoring the spread. News outlets picked up the story. Agricultural experts began analyzing the released technology and confirming its viability. Farmers started downloading the plans and discussing implementation. The response was overwhelming, far bigger than any of them had anticipated. As evening fell, Vance shut down his laptop. We should go. This location isn't secure anymore, and Axiom knows I was behind the release. They'll be looking for me. Come back with us, Bennett said. Stay at the farm. We're in this together now. Vance looked surprised, then touched. Are you sure? We have a spare room. And frankly, we could use someone who understands the technical side when farmers start asking questions about implementation. Plus, Iris added, you've been alone too long. Mum would want you with people who care about what she was fighting for. They packed quickly, loading Vance's essential equipment and documents into Bennett's truck. As they prepared to leave, Vance took one last look at the cabin that had been his prison and sanctuary for 2 years. Goodbye to all that, he said quietly. The drive home took them through the night. Behind them, they left a cabin in the mountains. Ahead of them lay uncertainty, legal battles, and the consequences of the truth they'd unleashed. But they drove together, a widower, his daughter, and the man who'd shared his wife's final mission, united by loss, by purpose, by the determination to honor a woman who died trying to make the world better. The fight was just beginning. But for the first time since Laurel's death, Bennett felt like they might actually win. They arrived home just before dawn to find Virgil sitting on Bennett's porch with his shotgun across his lap. Ash was beside him, alert and watchful. The old farmer stood as Bennett's truck pulled into the driveway. Been watching the place, Virgil said. That sedan showed up around midnight, stayed for an hour, then left. Figured you might need friendly eyes on the property. Thank you. Bennett introduced Sterling Vance, explaining briefly that the scientist would be staying with them. Virgil studied Vance with the careful assessment of someone who'd learned to judge character over 7 decades of life. You're the one who worked with Laurel? I am. Then you're welcome here. Virgil shook his hand firmly. Any man who tried to help her is a friend of mine. Inside, exhaustion hit them all at once. But before anyone could sleep, Vance's laptop pinged with an urgent message from Petra. He opened it, and they gathered around the screen. FBI opened investigation into Axiom this morning, Petra had written. State Attorney General following suit. 3 major news outlets running front-page stories. Agricultural Committee in Congress calling for hearings. You did it. The truth is out, and it's spreading faster than wildfire. Iris let out a whoop of triumph. Bennett felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he'd been carrying since the moment he'd discovered Laurel's journal. They'd actually done it. Against all odds, against corporate power and threats of violence, they'd exposed the truth. But Vance's expression remained somber. This is just the beginning. Axiom won't go down without a fight. He was right. By mid-morning, Bennett's phone was ringing constantly. Reporters requesting interviews, farmers asking questions about the irrigation technology, lawyers offering services, agricultural organizations wanting statements. Iris helped field calls while Bennett tried to manage the overwhelming attention. Then a call came that changed everything. Mr. Sawyer, a woman's voice, official and serious. This is Special Agent Karen Delacroix with the FBI. I'm leading the investigation into Axiom Agritech's activities. We need you and Dr. Vance to come in for interviews. We have questions about the evidence you released. Are we under investigation? Bennett asked carefully. No, sir. You're witnesses, potentially key witnesses in a criminal case, but we need official statements, and we need to examine the original evidence to establish chain of custody. She paused. Mr. Sawyer, your wife may have been murdered. We take that seriously, but we need your cooperation to build a case that will hold up in court. Bennett agreed to bring everything to the FBI field office the next morning. After hanging up, he found Vance and Iris in the kitchen, watching news coverage on a laptop. Every major outlet was running the story. Axiom's stock price was plummeting. Their CEO had released a statement denying all allegations and threatening legal action against malicious actors spreading false information. They're cornered, Vance said, and cornered animals are dangerous. As if to prove his point, a convoy of vehicles appeared on the road leading to Bennett's farm. 3 black SUVs moving fast, kicking up dust. Bennett's stomach dropped. Get inside, he told Iris, now. Virgil appeared from his truck parked nearby, shotgun in hand. I see them. The SUVs pulled up to the property line. Not quite trespassing, but close enough to make their presence threatening. Men in expensive suits emerged, along with a woman carrying a leather briefcase. She walked to the fence line and called out, Bennett Sawyer, I'm representing Axiom Agritech. We need to discuss your immediate cessation of all defamatory statements and the return of proprietary information. Bennett walked to meet her, staying on his own property. Virgil and Vance flanked him, a show of solidarity. Behind them, he knew Iris was watching from the window. There's nothing to discuss, Bennett said. Everything we released is documented fact, and it's already public. There's no taking it back. Mr. Sawyer, you're in possession of stolen intellectual property, technology developed under contract with Axiom Agritech. We're prepared to offer a settlement that will make this situation go away. Very generous compensation in exchange for a signed statement retracting your allegations and transferring all materials to us. My wife is dead because of your company. 2 women are dead. How much money do you think makes that go away? The woman's expression didn't change. We had nothing to do with any deaths. Your wife's accident was a tragedy, but it was an accident. These conspiracy theories you're spreading are actionable. The FBI doesn't think they're theories. They opened an investigation this morning. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe concern. Even so, you're exposing yourself to significant legal liability. Civil suits that could take everything you own. We're offering you a way out. I don't want your way out. Then you're making a serious mistake. She pulled a document from her briefcase. This is a cease and desist order. Stop making public statements about Axiom Agritech or face immediate legal action. We're also filing an injunction against further distribution of materials we consider proprietary. Vance stepped forward. The technology was developed independently on private land. You have no claim to it, and your contracts don't say otherwise. I've had 3 different intellectual property attorneys review the documentation. You're bluffing, Dr. Vance. We've been looking for you. The woman's smile was cold. You should know that federal charges for breach of contract and corporate espionage are being filed against you as we speak. Extradition requests to multiple states. You won't be hiding anymore. Good, I'm tired of hiding. Vance's voice was steady. And I'm ready to testify in court about everything Axiom has done. Every suppressed technology, every threatened researcher, every illegal tactic. I've documented all of it. The standoff stretched out, tension thick in the morning air. Finally, the woman returned the document to her briefcase. This isn't over, Mr. Sawyer. Not by a long shot. You've made powerful enemies, and you'll spend years regretting it. I've already spent 2 years regretting that I didn't know the truth sooner, Bennett replied. Now everyone knows, and there's nothing you can do about it. The woman and her companions returned to their vehicles, but before they left, she turned back. By the way, we've filed complaints with Child Protective Services, allegations that you're exposing your minor daughter to dangerous situations and inappropriate adult conflicts. They'll be conducting an investigation. The words hit Bennett like a physical blow. They were going after Iris now, trying to tear his family apart through the legal system. Virgil raised his shotgun slightly. Time for you folks to leave our property. The SUVs pulled away, leaving only dust and the echo of threats. Bennett stood frozen, processing what had just happened. They'd tried money, intimidation, legal threats, and when those hadn't worked, they'd targeted his daughter. Iris emerged from the house, her face pale but determined. Did they just threaten to take me away from you? They can't. It's an empty threat. But Bennett's voice lacked conviction. We need better legal representation, Vance said grimly. They're going to attack from every angle. We need people who can fight back. As if in answer, Bennett's phone rang again. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Sawyer? My name is Preston Vale. I'm an investigative journalist with a national outlet. I've been following the Axiom story since this morning, and I want to help you tell your wife's story. The real story, with full attribution and protection. Can we talk? Bennett looked at his daughter, at Vance, at Virgil standing guard with his shotgun. They'd released the truth, but the battle was just beginning. Yes, Bennett said into the phone. We can talk. Preston Vale arrived the next afternoon with a camera operator and a determination that reminded Bennett of what he imagined Claudia Sheffield must have been like. He was in his 40s, graying at the temples, with the worn look of someone who'd spent years chasing difficult truths. They set up in Bennett's living room, cameras positioned to capture the story Bennett had been holding inside for weeks. Iris sat beside her father, Sterling Vance on his other side. Petra had driven in that morning to participate. Together, they would tell the complete story of Laurel's fight against Axiom Agritech. Before we begin, Preston said, I need to show you something. It's why I've been investigating Axiom for the past year. He pulled up a photograph on his tablet. A woman with intelligent eyes and a determined expression. Claudia Sheffield. She was my colleague and my friend. When she disappeared, the police treated it as a cold case within weeks. But I never stopped looking for answers about what happened to her. Bennett stared at the photograph. She was supposed to meet with Laurel. They both died the same day. I know. I've been piecing together the timeline ever since. When your information went public yesterday, everything suddenly made sense. Claudia wasn't just investigating agricultural corruption. She was about to expose Axiom's entire operation. And they silenced her for it. Just like they silenced my wife, Bennett said quietly. Preston nodded. I want to tell both their stories, properly, completely, with all the evidence you've gathered. This isn't just about technology suppression anymore. This is about corporate murder and the women who died trying to expose it. The interview took 3 hours. Bennett recounted finding the hidden chamber, reading Laurel's journal, discovering the truth about her death. Iris spoke about losing her mother and then learning she'd been a hero, fighting for something bigger than herself. Vance detailed the technology's development and Axiom's systematic suppression of innovation. Petra provided academic context about how corporations manipulate research and silence scientists. Through it all, Preston's camera operator filmed, and Bennett felt the weight of his story becoming real, becoming permanent, becoming impossible to deny. They showed Preston everything: the journal entries in Laurel's handwriting, the recorded threats from Axiom executives, the partnership contract that proved Laurel had once worked with the company before turning against it, the technical documentation that demonstrated the irrigation technology actually worked, and finally, the most damning piece of evidence, Laurel's video testimony, recorded days before her death. Bennett had found it in the files from the USB drive, but had been unable to watch it until now. He pressed play, and his wife's face filled the laptop screen. She sat in the hidden chamber, the camera positioned on the desk. Her expression was calm but sad, like someone saying goodbye before a long journey. "If you're watching this, something has happened to me." Laurel's voice was steady. "Bennett, Iris, I'm so sorry I kept secrets from you. I'm sorry I didn't trust you with the truth, but I want you to know that everything I did, every choice I made, was to protect you and to fight for something I believed in." Tears streamed down Iris's face. Bennett reached for her hand. "I made a mistake years ago," Laurel continued. "I partnered with Axiom Agritech because I believed their promises. When I discovered they were lying, that they planned to suppress the very technology they'd hired me to develop, I had to make a choice. I could walk away and let them win, or I could fight back." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "I chose to fight. With Sterling's help, I spent years developing technology that could save farms like ours, like thousands of others across the drought zones. Technology that should be free, that should belong to everyone, not locked away by corporations protecting their profits." Laurel paused, her expression growing darker. "Axiom has threatened me. They've threatened our family. They've made it clear that if I continue this work, there will be consequences. But I can't stop. Too many people are counting on this. Too many farmers are losing their land because affordable solutions are being deliberately suppressed." Her voice broke slightly. "If something happens to me, please know it wasn't an accident. Axiom Agritech is responsible. And please, please finish what I started. Release the technology. Tell the truth. Don't let them silence me the way they've silenced others." Laurel looked directly at the camera, directly at Bennett and Iris across time and death. "I love you both more than anything in this world. I'm sorry I couldn't be braver sooner. I'm sorry I couldn't keep myself safe for you. But I'm not sorry I fought. And I hope you'll be proud of me for standing up for what's right, even when it was dangerous." The video ended. The living room was silent, except for the sound of Iris crying. Bennett pulled his daughter close, his own eyes wet. Preston and his camera operator stood respectfully quiet, having just witnessed something profoundly personal and devastating. "She knew," Iris whispered. "She knew they were going to kill her, and she did it anyway. She was the bravest person I ever knew," Vance said, his voice thick with emotion. "And she deserves for the world to know what she sacrificed." Preston carefully saved the video file. "This is going to be the centerpiece of the story. Laurel's testimony, in her own words, explaining everything. Axiom can deny written evidence, but they can't deny this." Over the next hour, they discussed publication strategy. Preston would release a comprehensive investigative piece, including all the evidence, the full timeline, and interviews with everyone involved. Other journalists he trusted would simultaneously publish supporting pieces. The video of Laurel would be released on multiple platforms, making it impossible to suppress. When this goes public, Preston warned, Axiom will come after all of us with everything they have. Legal threats, character assassination, attempts to discredit the evidence. Are you prepared for that? Bennett thought about Laurel's face on that video, about her courage in standing up to threats. He thought about Iris, who'd lost her mother but found purpose in continuing her fight. He thought about all the farmers who could benefit from technology that had been deliberately kept from them. We're prepared, he said. Preston's story went live that evening, appearing simultaneously on his outlet's website and across social media. The headline read, "Corporate Murder, How Axiom Agritech Silenced Two Women Who Threatened Their Empire." The response was immediate and explosive. The video of Laurel's testimony went viral within hours, shared millions of times. Public outrage poured in from every direction. Politicians called for investigations. Agricultural organizations demanded answers. Farmers rallied in support of the Sawyer family. Axiom stock went into freefall. Their CEO resigned. Board members scrambled to distance themselves from the company's actions. Law enforcement agencies in 3 states opened criminal investigations. By midnight, Bennett received a call from the FBI. Multiple Axiom executives were being arrested on charges ranging from corporate espionage to conspiracy to commit murder. The investigation Laurel had died trying to start was finally happening. Bennett stood on his porch, looking out at the cornfield where this had all begun. Ash sat beside him, the dogs howling finally silent now that the truth had been unearthed. In the darkness, Bennett could just make out the spot where the hidden chamber lay beneath the earth, Laurel's secret laboratory, her sanctuary, the place where she'd fought her lonely battle. "We did it," he whispered to the night, to his wife's memory. "We finished what you started." Inside, Iris and Vance were monitoring the continuing fallout online, watching as the world learned the truth about Laurel Sawyer and Claudia Sheffield, about corporate corruption and the suppression of innovation, about 2 women who died trying to make things better. The fight wasn't over. There would be trials, legal battles, years of consequences to navigate. But the truth was out now, unstoppable and undeniable. And somewhere, Bennett hoped, Laurel was finally at peace. 3 months later, Bennett stood in his cornfield, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and amber. The irrigation system hummed quietly beneath his feet. Laurel's system, finally installed and running openly across the entire farm. The difference was remarkable. Where drought-stunted stalks had struggled before, healthy corn now grew tall and strong. Their leaves a vibrant green that seemed impossible after years of brown and withered crops. Ash walked beside him, older and slower, but content. The dog no longer howled at the field. The secrets were gone, the truth uncovered and shared with the world. In the months since Preston's story broke, life had transformed in ways Bennett couldn't have imagined. Axiom Agritech had collapsed under the weight of criminal investigations and civil lawsuits. 3 executives faced murder charges in connection with Laurel and Claudia's deaths. The company's remaining assets were being liquidated, with settlements going to farmers they'd exploited over the years. But more importantly, Laurel's irrigation technology had spread across the region like hope taking root. Farmers from 6 states had installed the system, sharing knowledge and improvements freely. Agricultural universities had incorporated it into their research programs. The technology that Axiom had tried to bury was now saving farms and transforming communities. Bennett walked toward the section of field where the hidden chamber still existed beneath the earth. They'd considered filling it in, but Vance had suggested leaving it as a memorial, a reminder of the work that had happened in secret, the courage it had taken to stand against overwhelming power. A plaque now marked the spot, bronze letters gleaming in the morning light. In memory of Laurel Sawyer and Claudia Sheffield, who gave everything to bring truth to light and innovation to those who needed it most. "Dad," Iris's voice called from the house. "Breakfast is ready." Bennett smiled and turned back. His daughter had grown taller in these months, more confident. She'd started a blog documenting their journey and the spread of the irrigation technology. Young people across agricultural communities had responded, seeing in Iris and Laurel's story a model for standing up to corporate injustice. She'd received scholarship offers from a dozen universities, all of them wanting her to study environmental science or agricultural innovation. Inside, the kitchen smelled of coffee and fresh biscuits. Vance sat at the table reading news articles on his tablet, a permanent fixture in their home now. He'd been cleared of all criminal charges after providing testimony against Axiom. Now he worked with agricultural cooperatives, helping farmers implement the irrigation system and develop their own innovations. Virgil had joined them for breakfast, as he did most mornings. The old farmer had become family, part of the support network that had carried them through the difficult months of legal battles and media attention. "Morning," Virgil said, raising his coffee mug. "Saw the East Field on my way over. Looking better every day. Best crop I've had in 5 years," Bennett admitted, sitting down. "Maybe the best ever." They ate together, comfortable in the morning routine they'd developed. Talk turned to the day's plans. Bennett had meetings with other farmers, wanting to learn about the system. Iris had interviews with reporters, documenting the ongoing impact. Vance was presenting research findings at an agricultural conference. After breakfast, Bennett found himself back at Laurel's grave. It overlooked the fields, a simple headstone with her name and dates, and now a new inscription: "Hero, Innovator, Truth Teller." "We did it," Bennett said quietly. "Everything you fought for, it's happening. Farms are being saved. Families are staying on their land. The technology is free, just like you wanted." He paused, watching clouds drift across the sky. "Iris is thriving. She's going to study environmental science, continue your work in her own way. She talks about you all the time now, not with sadness, but with pride. She understands what you sacrificed and why." Bennett knelt, placing fresh flowers on the grave. "I understand too, finally. I was angry at first, angry that you kept secrets, angry that you took risks without telling me. But I get it now. You were protecting us and fighting for something bigger than yourself. That took a kind of courage I'm only beginning to appreciate." He stood, looking back at the farmhouse where Iris and Vance were visible through the kitchen window, laughing about something. Virgil's truck was pulling out of the driveway, heading back to his own property. Life continuing, moving forward, building on the foundation Laurel had laid. "I forgive you for the secrets," Bennett said. "And I'm sorry I didn't see what you were going through. Sorry I couldn't help carry the burden. But I'm grateful, so grateful for what you did. You saved this farm. You saved countless others. And you showed our daughter what real courage looks like." A breeze moved through the corn, rustling the leaves like whispered agreement. Bennett walked back toward the house, toward his daughter and the life they were building from the pieces of loss and sacrifice. The fight had cost them everything, but it had also given them something precious: purpose, community, and the knowledge that standing up for truth mattered, even when it was dangerous. That evening, as the sun set over the thriving fields, Bennett and Iris sat on the porch together. Ash lay between them, content and peaceful. "Mom would be proud of us," Iris said softly. "She would be proud of you," Bennett corrected. "The way you've carried forward her mission, the way you've helped other young people understand they can make a difference. That's her legacy living on." "It's our legacy now," Iris said, taking his hand. "All of us, you, me, Dr. Vance, everyone who installed the system and stood up to Axiom. Mom started it. But we're the ones making it real." Bennett squeezed her hand, looking out at the cornfield that had hidden so many secrets and now held so much promise. The irrigation system hummed its quiet song beneath the earth, water flowing to roots that had been thirsty for so long, bringing life back to land that had been dying. Ash, who had started this entire journey with his persistent howling, rested his graying head on Bennett's knee. The dog's work was done. The mystery was solved. The truth was free. And in the growing darkness, as stars began appearing one by one above the farm that 3 generations had worked, Bennett felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years: peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of meaning. Not forgetting, but honoring. Not ending, but beginning. The cornfield rustled in the evening breeze, and if you listened carefully, you might have heard it sound like Laurel's voice, satisfied, proud, and finally at rest. The truth had come to light. That technology was saving farms, and a family, broken by loss and secrets, had found their way back to wholeness through courage and love. That was legacy enough for any life. That was worth everything it had cost. And tomorrow, the sun would rise again over fields made green by a dead woman's dream and a living family's determination to see it through.